Thanks for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where you decide if remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always. We've got my co-host, Alex.
Yeah.
And we got a special guest. Who do we got with us today?
I'm Kat.
Excellent. Fans of the show should recognize Kat. She's been on, 4 or 5 episodes?
You have fans on this show?
A few.
Hell yeah.
The people we
Alex,
forced to
why don't
listen.
you tell us what we're going to be talking about today?
We're going to talk about a movie about a simple man who loves his wife and does everything he can to take care of her and make her happy, who's repeatedly humiliated and framed and ends up in jail because of it. It's the Pink Panther.
And then the 2006 reboot with Steve Martin.
Yeah, which, yeah.
So have you seen both of these films before? Because I was very surprised by the original.
I had not seen the remake with Steve Martin, and I can't remember if I've seen the original all the way through, but I definitely have seen parts of it when I was younger. If I saw the whole thing, I've forgotten about it.
What about you, Kat?
I had definitely seen the older one many times.
Oh, okay. And we'll talk about it when we start talking about the movies, but I didn't realize that the original one was not really an Inspector Clouseau film like the rest of them were. So I think I'm more familiar with some of the sequels, not the original. Because I was very surprised by how little goofs with Peter Sellers was in this film.
Yeah.
And he did quite a bit, but he wasn't in the movie very much.
Was that a character that he had developed previously? Like, was it on some French TV show or something?
No, so originally the movie was supposed to be about David Niven's character, Sir Charles Linton.
Yeah.
And then once they got Peter Sellers on board, it just kind of changed the way that the franchise was going to move forward, and Clouseau became the lead character. There was another actor who was originally cast as Clouseau, and they wanted to get some other famous actress as the wife, and then they couldn't get her, so the actor dropped out, and that's how Peter Sellers got the role, and the rest is history. Like, this is arguably his biggest movie. Of course, he did some stuff with Kubrick, but he then went on to do this for 4 or 5 movies over the course of 30 years.
He probably honestly turned this into an ongoing franchise.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly what happened.
But Clouseau it was developed for this movie.
Correct. It was meant to just be the side character,
Yeah,
and then just Peter Sellers being so charismatic and funny, he just kind of took over. The crew really liked him. They ended up letting him do a lot of improv. They started using multiple cameras just so they can capture everything he was doing. And then the sequels just became about him, to the point where at Academy Awards, when David Niven would show up, they'd want to play the Pink Panther music, and he'd be like, those aren't my movies. And so they stopped playing that music for David Niven.
Salty.
Yeah. And he was fine with it. Like, David Niven came back and did 2 more movies over the course of 20 plus years.
Fascinating.
But yeah, they weren't the only ones who did this. There was a movie that Alan Arkin played Clouseau, and then it went back to Peter Sellers. They had what's the actor's name who replaced Kevin Spacey in For All the Money in the World? Christopher Plummer ended up playing Sir Charles Linton in a movie or 2 as well. So they've recast these roles several times over the course of 1963 to 1993 when the original cast was doing these movies.
Wild.
Yeah, quite the history. But which one of you guys want to give us the 90-second elevator pitch? I guess Alex already kind of did for this first movie.
Well, maybe
I guess we should
somebody else can give us a real one, because mine was a little silly.
This is not my forte.
Okay, I guess I'll do the first one. So basically, in a nutshell, it's mostly what Alex said. There's a guy named the Phantom who... It was the Phantom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Phantom, who's this jewel thief who's infamous across all of Europe. He's trying to get a hold of the Pink Panther diamond, which is owned by this princess who she got this when she was a small child. And she was very obviously Middle Eastern Asia, or Western Asia, and then grew up to be an Italian woman. And the whole movie revolves around them trying to get this Pink Panther diamond. And Sir Charles Linton, who is the Phantom, is grappling with the decision whether or not to steal it because he falls in love with her. And you have Inspector Clouseau, who's trying to solve the crime before it happens, and hijinks ensue.
Hijinks.
Yep.
Oh,
These are more like low jinks, actually.
Yeah, if I knew going into this what this was like, I probably would have picked one of the sequels that was more revolving around Clouseau to compare to the Steve Martin one, because the Steve Martin is all Clouseau, and this is barely him. But I still think the plots are very similar. They're both going after the Pink Panther diamond, so I think this is still appropriate to talk about.
I had forgotten just how much of this was like one-off slapstick jokes.
Yeah.
There were some good jokes in it, though.
There were some really entertaining scenes, and you can tell the scenes where Peter Sellers was improvising, because the takes are about 3 times longer than the scenes for other actors. And you can see the places where they used multiple cameras, which was not the norm.
No, not back then. Alex, what were some highlights for you on this movie before we kind of deep dive into it?
Oh boy, I'm really gonna have to think about this one. Some of the stuff they were doing to but to get around the restrictions of the sexuality that they could put on film at the time were kind of interesting. So there's all those extended bits of Clouseau trying to make love to his beautiful wife and her rejecting him because she's, spoiler alert, the thief, and having, I think, 2 or 3 affairs. But they
it's really just the one. Somebody else wants to have an affair with her and she's not having it.
Well, she's getting around a little bit.
A little bit.
Anyway.
But she's French. I thought the French all were
Wow.
into having affairs and having mistresses and misters.
At the time they couldn't show a man and a woman in bed together, so there's one of these extended scenes where Clouseau is walking back and forth, turning the lights on, getting in bed with his wife, and then she's cold, so he has to get up and get her a blanket, turns the lights off again, walks back over to her, and it's all this one long take, but they only show like the foot of the bed. So knowing that they can't show them in bed together, that was kind of funny. And then another one of those scenes ends with them having champagne in bed, and he's obviously having blue balls. And finally, he gets into bed with her, and they're about to have sex, and the champagne explodes like premature ejaculation. So that was kind of funny, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my highlight. Oh, one of my highlights from this movie was realizing that the actor that played the princess was also on Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
What race was she in that movie?
Well, the actress is still Italian, but in the movie, I think she's American.
Yeah, so they actually dubbed her in this movie too.
Oh, did they?
Which is weird. Yeah, they
Who
dubbed
dubbed
her.
her?
Some 22-year-old American actress dubbed over Dala's voice.
Wow.
They did a good job. I didn't notice.
They did.
Yeah,
I might have
they
also
did this
been
a
asleep
lot
the
back
entire
in the
time.
60s and 70s, though. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's earliest films were all dubbed.
Yeah.
A lot of Dolph Lundgren's movies were all dubbed. Even Lou Ferrigno as Hercules was dubbed. So a lot of people would get these foreign actors because they're massive or they're beautiful, but they can't act, so they just dub them. I don't really get the point of that.
Yeah.
Another thing I forgot was that we get a little bit of blackface and whitewashing simultaneously right off the bat, like 5 minutes into this movie.
Yeah, that was weird. And that was an American actor who played like the princess's assistant.
Right. Another sign of the times is they also don't explicitly say where this princess is from, do they?
No, they just say she's the Maharaja's daughter.
Somewhere vaguely Asian.
But yeah, it was super weird because she was very ethnic as a child. Like
She was brown as a kid, and
Yeah.
then she grew up to be Italian.
Yeah, it was weird.
Less brown.
Maybe she's Sicilian.
Inconceivable.
Oh, I watched Marriage Story last night, by the way, and Wallace Shaw was in that, which I didn't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh, I missed that one.
Yeah.
One of my highlights, I actually really liked some of the slapstick stuff, but I really liked when he was spinning the globe and he wanted to put his hand on it for like travel and then it just falls off. I actually thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was
And they kind of bring that gag back in the Steve Martin one a little bit.
that annoys me so much in the Steve Martin movie, but we'll get to it.
Young Robert Wagner was in this film, and apparently Peter Sellers was completely threatened by him because he was this young, attractive American, and Peter Sellers always felt he was overweight. So he actually went on this like strict diet before going onto this movie. Once he found out that Robert Wagner was in it, he was taking diet pills, everything, and had a heart attack
Ugh.
just a few weeks before this movie.
What?
Yeah,
That's intense. You kind of see it in their scenes together where Peter Sellers' entire direction of his acting is so much more toned down to match Wagner's. And I think part of that was because he's just a different school of acting entirely. And, we see that so much in film that the trend in acting changes drastically in a span of maybe a decade.
no, absolutely. Besides Clouseau, who was your guys' favorite character in this movie?
I hated them all.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of did too. I think Sir Charles Lytton was my favorite
I liked
one.
George. I think he had the most interesting story in that he's just a spoiled college kid. Well, he's not even a college kid, but he's just taking advantage of his thief uncle. Not knowing that his uncle's a thief, just knowing that his uncle's rich. He goes and fakes a graduation photo shoot, and he's actually just a gambler and everything, a playboy. I think he was the most fun, well-rounded character.
Definitely.
Interesting.
He had the most to offer, most interesting.
And then he just jumps into the life of crime. Like, he finds out that his uncle's a thief, and he's like, I'm just going to be a thief now, and I'm going to take the uncle or the diamond before my uncle can.
Yeah, but it totally fits his MO.
Yeah. But yeah, this whole movie was supposed to be about Charles Linton, and he shows up in 2 more movies, but I know Peter Sellers, they say, stole the show, and his scenes are great, but I don't really get where that came from with this movie. Like, I don't feel like he's in the movie enough for people to, like, really have fallen in love with that character.
Yeah.
To have 5 or 6 other movies about him.
I think where that comes from is there is so little to the plot, and so much of this has to rely on the slapstick humor, which he's the only one who did really effectively.
And Charles Linton had some good scenes where he's, like, trying to get over the balconies and he's leaving Clouseau's room, and he's trying to get back into his own room, and he falls off the balcony, ends up in that little snow thing, and the rest of the movie he's got like snow on his lips and everything until they leave the hotel.
When he walks
he
out,
had some good physical stuff.
When he emerges from the snowdrift was actually like one of my favorite parts. It was a genuine laugh.
Yeah, me too. I laughed at that.
He like opens it like it's a door and just says hello to a group and then walks off. That was good.
And the skiing scene was okay. Like
The
when he
skiing
grabs
scene
the
at the
dog.
beginning?
Yeah. Oh no, like towards the middle when they get the kidnapped dog back.
Got it.
And that was all
That was
Robert
hilarious.
Wagner. I thought that was good. He goes and gets the dog out of a window as he's skiing by it.
It's just absurd. That's one place where the absurd humor works.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he skis over him and he's like flat on his back with ski marks over his body.
Right.
So like the most of the movie is pretty dumb, but there were a few scenes in there that I laughed out loud. I think throughout the whole movie, I laughed out loud maybe 4 or 5 times. Katrina, you liked the movie a lot more than I did. You were laughing throughout the whole movie.
It was entertaining, that's for sure. But it was just these 2 extremes of extremely problematic scenes and then the slapstick.
Right. There's also that big musical number in the middle of the movie.
Oh, jeez.
I feel like it's checking off a lot of boxes that they felt like movies had to have around this time. You know what I mean? Like we have
It was
to,
pretty racy.
we have
For 1963, it definitely was racy. Like Alex brought that up earlier, and they were really skirting that line of what they can do in movies back then.
yeah.
Right. I did enjoy the scene where David Niven's character is meeting the princess in her room, and it just made my skin crawl at the beginning because he's needling her about being this virgin queen, and he takes it way too far.
Yeah.
But he ends up not taking advantage of her.
Ugh.
I actually thought that part was kind of funny where he's like, oh, she's drunk. I need to get her in bed. You know, I need to protect her dignity. And he can't lift her. And he's like, he tries like 5 times to lift her up. He can't. So then he puts her in that tiger skin rug,
And
wraps her up, and drags her
The
into the other
tiger
room.
skin. So he's in her room, and they're having this conversation as she's laying on this demented-looking
It's like
tiger
bug eyes.
skin rug. Well, because back in the day, they used these cheap plastic eyes in them, and it's just grotesque. It's a dead animal on the floor. So she's laying on this and asks him, "What, you don't like animals? Like, bitch, you are laying
I
on
know.
a skinned cat. What are you talking about?"
And just so you know, they were actually in his room because to protect her dignity somehow. Oh no, because he had the hurt
that's
leg.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Oh boy.
So the plot of this movie was really weird because when you look up summaries on like IMDb and Wikipedia, every single one says Clouseau goes to Rome to prevent a jewel thief from getting the Pink Panther diamond. But I'd say a good 80% of this movie is in the snow chateau kind of resort.
Yeah, I was wondering where that is, how close to Italy that is. If it was it's not the Alps.
That was in
right?
France.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the French Alps,
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
which look just like the Austrian and Swiss Alps.
I've never been there,
It
I
could have
don't-
been anywhere, but that particular village is in France.
So once they finally get to Rome, where they're going to actually have the heist at the big party, the movie just kind of rips from there. Like, the whole movie kind of drags while they're at the snow resort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once it gets to Rome and they're having this party, it kind of just ramps up to 11. Dala, the princess, is in love with Sir Charles Linton. Sir Charles Linton's in love with her. So it's weird. Like, she decides to steal the diamond herself and frame Clouseau. so that way Sir Charles Linton doesn't get arrested. And there's this whole thing where there's like 2 or 3 different people in gorilla suits moving around, so nobody really knows who's who. And then there's like this crazy fireworks scene.
Right, they set off fireworks at the end of this party, and you see these poor extras who are literally running through flames to get out of this house. and that is something that I do genuinely enjoy about films that are like pre-80s. Extras are completely disposable. Like, there's this one Robin Hood
The
film
Errol Flynn one.
Yeah, people are like straight up getting stabbed with broadswords, and it's just a free-for-all. And this is another scene where they did that, and you kind of have to be thankful for our modern unions. Holy crap.
Well, then you had that car accident scene. So they end up in, a car, Sir Charles,
I like
his
his little
nephew
pink
George,
car.
and then the wife are all driving around. Then
It's
Clouseau,
a very British humor moment.
yeah, it's like a Benny Hill,
Yeah.
also kind of a Italian Job kind of action scene.
I like the old
And
Italian
so they're
man
driving
watching them
around
drive
Rome, and then Clouseau and a couple cops are in a Jeep, and then they all get in this giant accident.
But they're all in their costumes from the party.
Yeah. And then, but somehow they don't get thrown from the vehicle when they're just in the Jeep. Like, you see them, like, feet up in the air, but they stayed in the Jeep with no seatbelts or anything.
It's an accident that would have been multiple fatality.
Well, I mean, that kind of, this is what I was gonna say earlier about the guy being run over by skis. All the slapstick and stuff is like, it's a cartoon, it's a live action cartoon, but it feels like it doesn't, like, it only sometimes is. But I think that they should have leaned into that and made it like, made that a part of the entire movie, of every scene. It's like, yeah, this is a cartoon. Like Kung Fu Hustle does that really well. You just have to forget that
Home
it's
Alone.
live action. There's no, you shouldn't be paying attention to the physics of the movie. Yeah, and Home Alone rides that line really well. And I think the Steve Martin remake actually is aware of that, and they know that they're
Yeah.
trying to make a cartoon. So I kind of appreciate that they're a little bit more laser focused on the bit, even though I don't think it works at all.
No, not at all.
not for a lot of them. So the thing is with this franchise, and if I knew what this movie was going forward, I probably would have picked the Return of the Pink Panther, where they basically have to try to steal the same diamond again. But apparently with each subsequent film that Peter Sellers did, Clouseau got more and more cartoonish, like you
Yeah.
pointed out, where the physical humor gets even more ridiculous to the point where innocent bystanders get hurt. He gets a ridiculously thick French accent to the point where even French people can't understand him in subsequent films. And then he has like this weird, I don't want to say phobia, but apparently transvestite jokes become very prevalent in subsequent films, and the character is just like this huge confusion by transvestites in a lot of the articles I read about this franchise going forward.
Well, the dinner party scene, she basically asks him, she's like, well, the rumor is that you're not a man.
Yeah, that
And
was
she's
weird.
needling. It's just kind of like, she puts him in a position where his only recourse would be like to whip it out and set it on the table. And then
Yeah.
he doesn't. So then he gets up to walk away, and absolutely no one at the table goes to apologize. They all sit around like, oh, he's got a vagina.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, that seemed like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was very strange. Basically, this was a live-action cartoon, except for the parts where there was overt sexuality or transphobia.
So some of the slapstick scenes that I think went really well, one of the ones that I really laughed at was when Clouseau figures out that Linton is the Phantom and he wants to go storm into his room and arrest him. He gets his second in command. I don't remember what the character's name was. I think it was Tucker or something like that. And so he's running around with a golden gun, and Tucker's following him around, and Clouseau's waving the gun around. He accidentally discharges it like 2 or 3 times, and he's pointing it at Tucker. Tucker grabs the gun and goes to kind of lift up the gun, and Clouseau goes, "What are you doing? This is loaded. It's dangerous." And I thought that was hilarious.
That was funny. Ridiculous that he
kinda
discharged
all I-
his firearm twice inside of the hotel.
Yeah, it's absurd.
That's
And then I don't have
Should be
really much
removed from
more
the
to talk
force.
about this movie other than the end. Do you guys have anything else before we wrap this one up?
It's just such a train wreck, in my opinion.
Yeah. It felt a lot longer than
yeah,
an hour and 47 minutes.
yeah, it did.
It felt long. It felt like a 2.5-hour movie.
I think a big part of why this series, why this franchise became a thing and survived for so long, is the music and the cartoon at the beginning. Those are the things that I remember as
agree.
a kid, and I feel like those just like are so iconic and memorable. powered through no matter how uninteresting the movies actually are.
Well, and they're also shot beautifully. Like, the lighting design is fantastic. These weren't cheap movies. Everything was done perfectly except the freaking script.
Well, the thing is, they adapted a lot of scripts, so the next movie came out a year after this one. So they fast-tracked this franchise, and they took a famous play and just added Clouseau to it, and just kind of changed it. So there were several movies they did that they didn't really plan on having Clouseau in them. They just went, oh, this guy's a hit. We're just going to revamp movies and just throw this character in.
Right, because it was Pink Panther.
The scripts don't really make sense.
And then the next movie is Shot in the Dark, and then Inspector Clouseau, and then they go back to using the Pink Panther in the name. So it's Return of the Pink Panther Strikes Again, Revenge of the Pink Panther, Romance, Trail, Curse of the Pink Panther, and then finally Son of the Pink Panther, which I realized is why the Mask franchise didn't work, because they went straight to Son of the Mask, I think the second or third movie.
Well, that and Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jamie Kennedy's all right, but they should have had, 2 movies that were not named after the Mask, like Loki or whatever, Mask of Loki, and then you do Return of the Mask Strikes Again, blah, 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 and then you do Son of the Mask. I think that would have been much better for that franchise.
Could have done it. Well, there was this whole thing where, so Peter Sellers died in 1980, but there was a movie that came out in 83 that used footage and B-roll from previous movies, and Peter Sellers' family was pissed that they did that. So that's when they ended up doing Son of Pink Panther later on, and they just put a new character in. There's another one that
Roberto
takes place
Benigni, by the way.
What was that?
Roberto Benigni from Life is Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
And then they had Charles Linton as the lead for like 2 movies, and one of them had David Niven come back. So it's really weird how people came in and out of this franchise. And then it was just dead from 1993 until 2006 when we get to the Steve Martin one.
Excellent segue.
But, yeah. But before we move on.
Oh, what do you feel like doing tonight?
I don't know, Ange. What do you feel like doing?
We're back to that, huh? I say to you, what do you feel like doing tonight? And you say back to me, I don't know what do you feel like doing tonight. Then we wind up sitting around your house with a couple of cans of beer watching a hit parade on television.
So what have you been up to, bud?
I've been rewatching Community.
Nice.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I just put it on to watch a couple episodes, and I ended up watching almost the entire thing. I'm going to finish it this week probably. I watched the documentary about Richard Stanley, who was originally supposed to direct Island of Dr. Moreau with Marlon Brando. And it's sort of about how he lost his version of the movie, and it ended up being taken over by John Frankenheimer, and Val Kilmer sabotaged him essentially.
They all did. David Thulu, Val Kilmer, and Marlon Brando all hated each other and just made that movie a nightmare.
Yeah, it's insane.
I feel like if someone's got a problem created by Val Kilmer, you get rid of Val Kilmer.
Well, you couldn't at the time.
Batman Forever.
Yeah, he was
huge at the time.
He was the biggest star in the world.
Himself.
Yeah. So, Katrina and I watched most of the same things. So all I watched that she didn't watch was Extraction on Netflix with Chris Hemsworth, which I thought was phenomenal. The action.
I can never get you to watch Dr. Pimple Popper with me, but you'll watch that.
It was incredible. They had this one scene that's like a 12-minute oneer. It's not a single shot, but they have some cuts. But it is an incredible action film. And I have watched some Dr. Pop Pimples.
After you drive through my joke. I've been watching Unorthodox, for a little healthy dose of super heavy shit I don't need to be watching right now.
Well, I watched Marriage Story last night, so
well
I got mine.
We started watching Ozark season 3.
Oh, I freaking love Ozark.
I'm going to have to start watching that. My brother was trying to get me on that, too.
It's so good.
We caught up to Westworld. We finished it.
Thank God. Yikes.
Yeah, that was
so boring.
Nothing happened.
No, season 3 was nothing.
It was beautiful, but nothing happened.
It feels like the end of season 2. They're in the exact same spot.
So
I don't know.
I wonder if the next season of Westworld is going to jump ahead, 50 or 100 years or something. Because what's his face was all dusty.
No, I think it's going to jump forward maybe a few years with Jesse Pinkman being a John Connor.
Jesse Pinkman.
He was very dusty.
Yeah, I agree.
What's his face? Bernard.
Yeah, he was weird too.
I hate him.
Katrina doesn't like Jeffrey Wright.
I've grown to like him
Wright
more.
in other roles.
I've grown to like him more over the last few years.
I think he's good in other things. I get why she doesn't like him in Westworld. His
Is this a race thing?
character just really doesn't make sense.
Wow. Okay, we bring up race a lot in these podcasts because we revisit a lot of old material that is just inherently racist. Now, I just don't like his delivery. His voice bugs me.
Interesting.
It really does.
It's funny because I'd actually really like to see him as like Doc Ock if they reboot that character in Spider-Man. I think he'd be good in that role.
Oh, I like that. That's kind of cool.
I think that's all that we watched, though.
Yeah, pretty much.
I watched the McMillions documentary. That was pretty cool.
Oh, that was
That was a
really
good one.
good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I also I watched The Late Shift, which is like a HBO movie about the late night wars from, I think it was made in '96. And
The Jay Leno. And,
yeah, it was really good, and it had some of the Christopher Guest improv troupe players in it, which I didn't realize, and that was cool.
That whole story is bonkers between Jay Leno and David Letterman.
Yeah, they should make a
still
sequel to that with
hate each other.
Conan and everybody.
Right?
No, I'm serious.
Conan.
I would watch that.
You
It'd
really
be cool.
got the short end of the stick there.
Yeah. We were Team Coco all the way when that was going on.
Go, Coco.
Yeah.
All right. I think we should get into the second film.
No.
I suppose.
we just end it
Katrina,
here?
can you do your best to give us the 90-second pitch on this one?
No.
Please?
No, I can't.
You're the guest. You have to do it.
I don't even remember what happened.
Well, do your best.
No, honestly, I don't remember what the fuck happened.
All right.
in
Well,
this movie. Why was Beyonce there?
Let's try and work through it together. Hobbs and Shaw is dating Beyonce. He's also a soccer coach, I guess, and he gets killed in the middle of a game. And then Steve Martin has to find the ring that was stolen, which is the Pink Panther ring again. What else happens?
Clive Owen as a child.
He's not a child.
Clive
though.
Owen
I don't
was
know
the
what
best
that
part
note
of the
means.
movie.
He's like he's 006, one short of the big time.
Wow.
Kevin Kline is doing some kind of accent.
He's supposed to be French.
Intermittently.
Yeah.
So he plays Dreyfus, is the commissioner and his boss, and he's in every other Pink Panther movie except for the original one that we watched. But that character's supposed to be actively trying to go against Clouseau in the rest of the films apparently as well.
So in this movie, he is trying to get a Medal of Honor. So he puts Clouseau on the case because he thinks he's incompetent. I didn't really get this part. He thinks that Clouseau is gonna keep the media attention away from himself as he works on the case. But like, why don't you just work the case?
Yeah, I don't understand that. It didn't really make any sense to me either.
Yeah.
No, it didn't.
So much-
He kind of made it sound like he had to assign the case to someone because he was supposedly busy doing his job, but he ultimately gave it to him because he knew who would screw it up, so then he could take over the case and take all the glory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
it didn't really make sense. It
It
was a
didn't
bit of a
make any
stretch
sense.
for a plot point.
yeah, and much to his chagrin, Clouseau ends up figuring it out, not being good at it. I almost said
Not
being
really. He accidentally figures it out.
good. Yeah. Yeah, Beyonce's in it.
I don't know what to say about this movie.
What's crazy is this is the highest grossing of all the Pink Panther movies.
It-
But it didn't make that much money. So the budget of this movie was 80-ish million.
That's insane.
20 million of it went to Steve Martin. So he got 20 million for this movie.
Did Beyonce pay for this movie to be made?
No, like this was something that they'd been wanting to do for a while, apparently.
She's also
Why?
like not Beyonce at that point. You know what I mean? She's not.
I think this
she
was
was
right after
Beyonce.
she split from Destiny's Child.
Yeah, but
So she'd been doing it for a little bit because she'd already done the Austin Powers movie like 3 or 4 years
God
before
I
that.
think it was,
bless
So
her.
I think it
this
was 2 years before.
Yeah, so this was her doing big. Like this was right as she was really getting to the peak of her solo career.
I think
No,
Austin
I think she's a bigger
Powers
star now
being-
than she was then.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Austin Powers being the precursor to this explains a lot about why and how this movie got made. Because audiences really ate this garbage up.
Which I don't understand how they say this was a hit because, like I said, $80 million budget. It only made $164 million worldwide.
Yeah.
But that was enough to get this a sequel. So it's like, generally with a big action movie, whatever the budget is, they'll do the budget again for promotion. Now, a movie like this, they don't need to do. But you still have to imagine they did $20 to $30 million worth of advertising and promotion.
At least.
So yes, this movie made a profit, but not that much.
I think because it was able to slide in as a supposed family film, because it had enough slapstick to trick the kids into thinking it was a kid's film, but you also have an assistant straddling Steve Martin's face for all the pervy dads.
Well, and it wasn't just that. There were some other sexual scenes in this. This was actually almost got a rated R, and they had to cut it down, and they needed it to be PG for your point exactly. It needed to be a kid's movie. So they had to cut out a lot of stuff to get it down to a PG.
Again, it's a live action cartoon.
Yeah.
It is very problematic.
Yeah, and like all of the jokes, almost all of the jokes are like fart jokes or somebody getting hit or something. Like it's aimed at 7-year-olds essentially.
Yeah.
I did laugh at the fart joke.
It's not that it's not funny, it's just that almost every single joke is that. And then, you know, there's the pervy jokes or whatever that are gonna be funny to kids, but they're also there for adults or whatever. But it's 90% these like hacky slapstick jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like talking to, I mean, she a secretary or assistant. She kind of becomes an assistant,
Right.
But he's saying he doesn't want to be there with her after hours for appearances. And then they both agree. So he's like, well, we'll seal it with a kiss. And then he slaps her on the ass.
Yeah, that was that was something all right.
I didn't understand the joke that you brought up where when we first meet that character played by Emily Mortimer, she's like hanging a portrait of Kevin Kline's character because he found out that another inspector had a bigger portrait, so he goes and gets a larger one. So she goes to ask Clouseau for help down, and I don't understand how she ended up straddling his face. Like, how did that go there?
Yeah,
because he didn't know how to do a lift from the waist.
Oh, okay. That was weird. It just was, I didn't get it. It was very cringy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it went on for a really long time.
Yeah, they're just like they're taking
seconds.
such long walks for these jokes. It's like, oh, okay. So now she's straddling his face, I guess. That's funny. All right.
Everything was drawn out like that, though.
The globe?
Well, the globe scene, Felicia, you sounded a little enthusiastic about that one.
My gripe with the globe scene is that it comes back later as if the globe has just been rolling around for 2 days or something. Which when I say it like that is actually kind of funny, but in the context of the movie, it didn't work for me. I was just like, oh my god, it just feels forced, you know?
It did, because you think it's going to be a throwback to the joke from the original movie where he spins it and he goes to lean on it and he falls, but instead the globe falls off, goes down the stairs, breaks somebody's leg,
almost kills some cyclists.
Yeah, and then like Alex said, it's supposed to be a couple days later. It just rolls down the street and hits a cyclist that Clouseau already hit with his car door.
The poor cyclist. I think the thing that's frustrating about this movie is that he's so incompetent. Like it's ramped up so much from the first movie or from the original, and you know it's 2020 hindsight a little bit, but it's just so boring and annoying to watch an incompetent white man fail up now. You know, I'm just like, fuck, man.
Well, so
it's too real.
I worked at the movie theater when this came out. I definitely remember cleaning the theater and hearing that Beyonce song over and over again.
Ugh.
But I really don't remember people watching this movie.
Just
like,
empty theaters.
Yeah, I really do remember it being nothing.
It was painful. Both of these movies, one thing they have in common is about 3/4 of the way through, you're begging for them to be over.
Yeah.
I did like Jean Reno. I think he brought some levity to the movie, and I think that kind of helped me when he was on scene, made me feel like those scenes weren't dragging.
Mm-hmm.
But anything where he wasn't, I really didn't like the movie. Like,
everything went on about twice as long as it should have if they wanted it to be funny.
Well, when I realized that this movie was made for infants, basically, was when he was backing his smart car. By the way, he drives a smart car, and like that's the joke, that he drives a smart car, which is stupid. Like, oh, it's tiny. Yeah, but he's environmentally conscious. Anyway,
sign of the times.
He tries to parallel park his smart car in between two other cars that are more than a full size car length away from each other, and he backs and goes forward into these cars over and over and over and over, and it's so annoying. And after like the fifth time he hit the car, I was like, oh, this movie is for like children's children. It's for zygotes. It's for tiny little
right. And that could have gotten a legitimate laugh if he had screeched into the spot, hit each bumper twice, and then gotten out.
Yeah.
But it just they kill themselves.
Yeah.
I don't remember what movie it was, but there's another movie that does exactly the same thing.
I feel like I've seen that joke a million times.
And then they peel out and they're like, oh, this is never gonna work, and then it zooms out, and then it was like 5 car lanes for that car.
Yeah.
Like, there are other movies that did this joke better.
Yeah. And I mean, Austin Powers had just come out and it did the same basic idea really well too.
Yeah. I did like the scene where he's announced to the press that he is going to be the inspector taking over the case, and there's a joke where it's like, do you know if the inspector or if the murder was a man or a woman? And it's like, but of course, what else do you think it would be, a kitten or something like that? Like,
That one got a laugh out of me.
I did like that scene.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. The wordplay was good, but
How about
most of the movie fell flat for me.
how about the remix of the song?
The Pink Panther song?
Yeah, it sounded like it was in the Matrix.
One of the things that I did notice about the second film is that it took the fun title sequence that is a signature of the Pink Panther series and somehow did it badly.
Well, they got the same artist to do it, which is interesting. But I agree, it went on just a little too long, and I don't know, I didn't like the animated Clouseau at all.
Yeah, and I kind of
Yeah.
feel like Henry Mancini's work is just sacred on a certain level. So once you start remixing stuff, you lose me.
Yeah, and it's also just
like you guys-
it's so dated, like so many other things in this movie, but having that like that dancey remix is just like, ugh, all right.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when you have, like you guys both said, that song is so iconic. Like, people who've never seen any Pink Panther movies know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
In the late 90s, early 2000s, when you had those, like, tone-based ringtones, how many people did you know that had the Pink Panther as a ringtone?
I had it for a
Yeah.
while.
Everybody did. So it is a little disappointing to see them, like you guys said, mess up a classic song.
Bastardizing Mancini.
Yeah.
Excuse you.
Didn't he also have, like, a
I don't-
mattress?
I don't really
empire?
understand. What's that?
Mancini Sleep World.
Mancini Sleep World? Hell yeah. I don't really understand the cartoon. Like, the Pink Panther's a diamond, but then it also is supposed to be kind of Clouseau, but then in the remake it's not really Clouseau. Like, what is the Pink Panther cartoon?
So they just wanted a fun intro in the original one because they made a bigger deal about it in the original series that the diamond had a defect that when you looked at it, it looks like there was a panther inside.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that. I understand like where it's coming from and stuff, but I'm saying they're in execution, like is the Pink Panther cartoon supposed to be like a metaphor or like a symbol for Clouseau? Because it feels like that in the original, and then the
Right.
remake they have a
Yeah, I
Clouseau
don't know.
cartoon, and like it's mischievous but Clouseau's not mischievous. It doesn't really track for me.
Well,
I get that
and
it's
then even
cute.
at the end of the movie, it does mess with him as like the Pink Panther shows up animated in the real world holding a stop sign trying to get them to stop,
Yeah,
and then it gets run over and then causes a car accident. So
It just-
I don't really
it just feels like
understand
the-
how they were utilizing
yeah, it feels like the filmmakers or whatever just like, it's cute, don't think about it, don't worry about it.
Well, even as recently as the 60s, licensing for characters like that, cartoon characters, was much different than it is now. So you would see the Pink Panther used in commercials. It would be used on business signs.
Yeah.
And people didn't really care. Like, it could be several characters from a movie and also sell cereal.
Yeah.
I think people didn't mind as much. They just liked it.
Yeah.
I definitely
Well,
remember
that brings me
seeing
around
commercial-
to my a thought that I had about the new one. 'Cause you were talking about where did it make money? It only made 160 million or whatever worldwide. I would like to see how much it made on DVDs and also in other promotion. You know, if they were licensing the Pink Panther cartoon out to be used in other places.
Oh, maybe.
Like, I
That's
bet
possible,
it's
'cause
driving a lot of
I don't get
ancillary
it.
profits.
It would have to have had. I just don't understand based off. If you went by box office alone, it doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
get a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much we didn't talk about, but it just feels like it's kind of a waste to talk about this movie.
Okay,
It
so
really
one
is. There's
of the most infuriating jokes for me was at the beginning. So the first two jokes in this movie, by the way, are Clouseau putting a siren on top of his car, and then they take a turn, and the siren flies off and hits an old woman in the face.
I laughed at that.
It was obviously
But
a
it's-
male stunt person.
But it's such like, I mean, it's not that it's not a good slapstick joke, I guess, but it's just like that's the first joke in the movie. It feels like a sign of what's coming. And then the second joke is another old person getting hurt. But the thing that annoys me about it is that this old man is in like an electric wheelchair and he can't get it to move. So Clouseau reattaches the battery, and his thought process is, I'm going to attach the positive to negative and negative to positive, which is ridiculous. And then he does it, and it powers the car up, but it makes it go backwards instead of when the guy pushes forwards.
And more power than it should have.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, I think that was the moment where
oof.
this film lost me.
Yeah,
And that was
which is
maybe
90
3
seconds
minutes in.
Yeah.
Well, and between those two jokes, there was a joke that I liked when they arrived to the scene and Clouseau's not driving, somebody else is. And so he opens the door and bangs it against a wall, and he's like, pull forward, idiot, and everything. Like, I kind of thought that was funny, but it was kind of sandwiched between those two shitty jokes.
One joke that could have been done well, was almost done well, was the accent coach. Except the first scene where he's with the accent coach goes on about 5 times longer than it should have. He can't say hamburger.
It thinks it's a lot funnier
and then he comes back
than
later
it
and he
is.
can't say it. Yeah, I think if it had just touched on it a little bit, then when they close up that joke later with him causing a riot basically because he can't pronounce hamburger, that would have been a lot funnier.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's just bad.
This movie made me really sad.
Yeah.
And
like
I felt bad for all of the
had this-
adults that were involved in this. Like, I mean,
not Steve Martin. He got $20 million for it.
yeah, but like, so I didn't grow up watching The Jerk or any like classic Steve Martin or anything, so I don't really have a nostalgic connection to him, but I recognize that he can be very funny and is, you know, a national treasure and everything. But I was watching this and I was like, man, Steve Martin might not actually be that funny.
Not in this. He's not funny in this at all. I'm a
Father
big
of
Steve
the
Martin
Bride is his wheelhouse, and then of
Yeah.
course SNL. King
Yeah.
Tut.
Yeah.
fan. One of my favorite jokes of all time is actually a Steve Martin joke when he hosted the Academy Awards. He did it during the year that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out. So he's like, I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I didn't see any tigers or dragons, and I realized they were all crouching and hidden. And I think that's an hilarious joke.
I think his strength is the dad jokes with just a little hint of perversion every once in a while. And this movie, you just think he's a little grosser.
Yeah, he kind of went back to his 70s kind of acting. Because in the 70s, like Alex brought up The Jerk, there are a lot more overtly sexual jokes. But as he got into the 80s and 90s and he started doing those kind of rom-coms, and then going into the family comedies like Cheaper by the Dozen, Father of the Bride, he starts to kind of get more mild. And I think you're right. The 80s, 90s is kind of where he's peak enjoyment for everybody. The other thing I didn't like about this movie was just how often they repeated jokes. So throughout the whole movie, they have this bit where he's like, don't leave Europe. And then someone's like, well, I've got this thing. Oh, then you can go there, but don't leave that place. Oh, I've got a thing at this place too. Okay, don't leave that place either. And they did that for Zanya, played by Beyonce. They did that for Yuri the Trainer, and they did that for a third person, like 3 different people. They did the same joke.
Well, comedy comes in
And it
threes.
was... No, is that what it is?
Yeah. It's not a good enough joke to repeat that much.
How did you guys feel about the Clive Owen 006 action scene in the middle of the movie?
I thought Clive Owen was great.
Yeah, I liked that part.
And I like that they, you know, he's obviously just James Bond. They just didn't want to say it, but that's what he's doing. And it made me wish
he was
that
the second choice.
it made me wish
Daniel
that there
Craig.
was a Clive Owen James Bond. Like, I want to see that now.
Yeah, he would have been great. Like 10, 15 years ago, he would have been perfect.
Yeah,
Bond,
like
I think.
he was, I think he would have been the perfect Bond in between Pierce and Daniel. I'm on a first name basis with these guys. Well, you guys go ahead. I have another question, but what did you guys think of Clive Owen?
I thought that scene was great. I thought Clive Owen really played it straight, and I think it was great seeing somebody just not act absurd and just play everything like it's straight. Like he's a 00 agent.
Yeah, it was so cool.
And he's just dealing with this idiot, and he just does it and goes. I really liked how straight he played it.
Yeah, he just handled him.
You got anything, honey?
Not really.
I have a question. Why?
I was done with these movies before we finished watching them.
Why does this movie hate bicyclists so much?
I don't know.
They kept shitting on bicyclists. Like
I don't get it.
There's that. I think it was when the globe rolls across a street and it causes like a 10 bike pileup. People would have died.
Right. For real.
Yeah.
That's so dangerous.
Maybe the screenwriter lives in San Francisco where cyclists are just demons.
I'm really curious about the stunt work in that scene actually, because like five or six people on bikes really did like crash.
Yeah.
I'd like to see how they did that stunt. It was pretty impressive.
I think they probably
just got
did it.
real high, tried to land soft. I don't know. Because they're just doing it.
How about the scene where the soccer player who's a suspect who used to date Beyonce talks to Clouseau about the murder without a lawyer present?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, anybody being questioned about a murder should have a lawyer present, but this guy,
Absolutely,
this
they
guy,
should.
this guy's a massive international sports star. How does he not have a lawyer there?
I don't know. Well, Clouseau just kind of shows up. He does it with everybody. There's no lawyers in any of this
But
stuff.
he's got him in like a back
And-
room or something, or at the police station.
Yeah,
I thought
weird.
it was.
So we didn't really talk about the end of the first movie, and it's very similar to the end of this one, where somebody has the diamond and doesn't even realize it, and that kind of drove me crazy. So like Peter Sellers is framed at the end. He pulls out his handkerchief.
Oh my
from
god,
the
that
original
annoyed me
one,
so much.
And it's like, how did you not know you
Or
had
when
it?
he reaches into the purse and doesn't feel
Yeah,
it.
that drove me crazy. When
until he cuts open the lining.
yeah, there's no way Kevin Kline would have realized the purse was in there. He like buries his hand and makes this whole thing like.
That's
He
like
lifts it
not
up.
knowing you have an extra testicle until your scrotum is cut open.
And
Give
it's-
me a break.
Jesus, and it's also like a massive diamond. It's the size
Yeah,
of a
it's
baby's
huge.
fist.
It's like the size of a fist. Yeah. There's no way he wouldn't have known that it was in there.
Yeah.
Well, the way Steve Martin's character Clouseau figures it out is he gets made fun of at an airport, making this giant scene, and he's in the newspaper, and he zooms in on a newspaper photo and sees an X-ray of Zanya's bag and sees the diamond, but diamonds wouldn't show up on an X-ray.
Which, by the way, is the exact same thing that happens in the climax of Disturbia.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we talked. Yeah, it was stupid. There's no way you could have seen that, and there's no way you would enhance that quality of photo that
Yeah.
level. Yeah, it's dumb.
I did like.
Dum,
I liked.
dum.
I forget how it started. I feel something that got thrown out the window, and it lands on a vendor cart outside,
Like a
And the
crate
cart
cart
ex-
that explodes.
and it just explodes.
So Emily Mortimer tries to swallow a hard-boiled egg
Oh,
whole
right.
for some reason, and so Steve Martin goes and is doing the Heimlich maneuver, and it flies out the window and blows up a crepe cart.
I like that, but I really just like that because it feels like a reference to The Simpsons, because The Simpsons used to do that all the time. Like things would just explode for no reason.
21 Jump Street did that too, with the chicken truck.
Oh, geez.
And I feel like that's always funny when something that you don't expect to explode explodes.
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 I don't really have anything else.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything?
No, that's kind of it for me. The cart exploding was my last note.
I think my highlight for this film is when he realizes that the recording booth is soundproof, so he goes
Oh
in
my
and
God.
just farts.
And they all hear it.
Lots of farts.
One of my notes says I did not laugh a single time during this movie.
Oh, I laughed at this one more than the original one, but it's more laughing at the movie than
Right.
with it.
I didn't count when
it's
it was
bad.
a laugh cry out of sadness.
So I think the question we obviously have to ask is, did this movie need to be remade?
No.
I don't think any of these movies needed to be made.
No.
Actually, no, I
This
take
is-
that back. I think there's a version of the Pink Panther being remade that is good and takes it into a new direction. You know, like 21 Jump Street didn't need to be remade, and they did the best possible version of it and added something new, and that's interesting. And I see how that could have happened with Pink Panther, but this wasn't it.
Yeah,
I'm
agree.
sad that this
just
movie
missed on
exists.
every mark.
Yeah, I think the existence of the remake actually makes the world a worse place.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the news now. Movie news. All right. So let's get into the news. There's not a ton of going on, but I did find a few things I wanted to talk about. So the biggest story over the last couple weeks is Disney is doing yet another live-action remake of
God.
Hercules. So this kind of leaked a few days ago, and there were rumors that Jon Favreau was going to do it because obviously he's done two huge remakes for them.
Give
with
somebody
Lion
else a
King
chance.
And Jungle Book.
How is he not busy?
He's not doing it. The other one was going to be Gore Verbinski, who did the Pirates movies.
Nah.
And then the other rumor was the Russo brothers, who did obviously the
Yeah.
biggest Avengers movies and the Captain America movies. So it turns out the Russos are producing but not directing. They don't have a director yet. They're still figuring out the movie. They said the music is going to be part of it, but they don't necessarily know if this is going to be a musical. And it's going to be a new story that takes elements from the original cartoons. So
I hope they bring
it's
James
pretty
Woods back.
early, but that movie's definitely happening.
Who do you think should direct it? And also, what are they going to do with the dude's blue flaming head? That's going to be weird in live action.
Oh.
There's been
That'd
enough
be
stuff.
fun.
Like Ghost Rider actually did the flaming head pretty well.
But it's
I think they
but
could
Ghost
do
Rider
that
is a
pretty
movie
well.
for adults. Like, it's terrifying.
I just hope it stays goofy and they don't try and take it too seriously.
And they get Danny DeVito back as Phil.
I freaking love Danny DeVito. He's shorter in person.
Who do we want to see direct that though?
A woman.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Disney, so they're gonna end up intervening anyway. It's tricky. I don't know who would be the ideal director for this.
A woman minority.
That'd be cool. The person who did the Harley Quinn movie did a great job. I think she could do the super powered fight scene
We don't
and
know
still
her name.
become. I don't know her name. I feel terrible, but she did a good job. I'd throw her hat or throw her name in the ring.
You
or the
throw her
hat?
hat?
Whatever it is.
See, this is another
Throw a
race thing,
hat
man.
So Alex and I have a bet on when the movie theater is going to reopen for a major release. So I'm saying July because of Christopher Nolan's Tenet, but Warner Brothers said that they're going to make a decision by the end of this coming up week. By the time the episode drops, there'll be a solution as to whether or not Tenet's going to be delayed. And if Tenet's delayed, Alex wins the bet.
Do you guys want to go to the theater?
No. I mean, yes,
I
yes,
kinda
but
do.
I don't. I want to go, but I don't want to get sick and die.
Exactly.
At what point would you consider it?
Well, Gavin Newsom, our governor in California here, is doing phased reopening of businesses and stuff, right? So we just started phase 2, where we can do curbside pickup of sporting goods and some other stuff. And it's got to be, I think there's 2 weeks for each phase at best. You know, we have to see declining numbers. So movie theaters and stuff like that are phase 4. They're last on the list. So in a perfect world, they are still 3 weeks away, which would put it at the beginning of June. And I think that's way too optimistic.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I think we are not going to see phase 4. I don't think we're going to see theaters open up until August or September.
I still think July, if Tenet opens. If Warner Brothers decides to push it, then I think it's going to be August. If Warner Brothers decides to stay with that July date, because East Coast theaters are opening, I think it'll be July. And to answer your question, Kat, where I would feel comfortable going would be, like we have AMC A-List, would be when you go into the app to pick your seat, if it was grayed out, like there's 2 seats together, and then it's 3 or 4 seats grayed out, 2 seats, and then the seats behind you, it's like a checkerboard, so there's nobody in front of you, there's no one behind you, as it checkerboards across. I would feel comfortable going, not getting food or drink or anything. If I brought my own Clorox wipes and just wiped down the seats and everything,
Ugh.
I'd feel comfortable if there was that much distance.
It's the recycled air, man.
Yeah,
And
I don't want to
for
be in the
me-
same room as all these other people for 2-3 hours.
Right. For me, like theater employees in general are usually on the younger side. They're usually on the underpaid side. They're usually on the not giving a shit
That's true.
side.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are so many people out there who just really don't get it. And anytime when I can feasibly and easily be in close proximity with someone who's being really inconsiderate and not wearing a mask and not caring that they're crowding me, I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a situation where I can be put in that situation
Yeah.
and have to actively ask someone else to intervene. I want to know that it's going to be completely controlled.
Right.
Yeah. And you
And
know,
that's where, like,
another thing is
go
that
ahead, Alex.
thanks. Another thing is that they're going to have to do a month of promotion. So if you think it's going to come out in July, that means they're going to have to start promoting it in June, when we don't even know if we're reopening, you know, in phase 4 or whatever. And another thing to think about is that they have to do it nationwide. So every state has to be open. They're not going to only open it on the East Coast or whatever, or in blue states.
Right.
So we need a month. They're going to have to start marketing when everything is already opened up everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. So it's
I just
really
don't
gonna
see
be
that
telling
happening
this
by
next
July.
week.
Yeah.
No.
It's really, I think it's Warner Brothers is ultimately going to make this decision because half the country is opening over the next couple weeks. It's really just California, so they're going to have to decide if they're going to bet on California being opening in that time frame. So it is what it is. The last story I've got is the Pirates of the Caribbean reboot. They're looking for Karen Gillan to be taking over that role. No
Jack Sparrow?
offers have been formally.
Jill
I don't
Sparrow?
know why any of this needs to happen. Why do we need more pirates? Why do we need more Karen Gillan? I don't get it.
People like Karen Gillan.
Why? What's
Wait,
the
are we talking
appeal?
about the SNL person, or are we talking about Karen Gillian?
Karen Gillan, Gillan.
The redhead.
From Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yeah.
Jumanji.
Okay, word.
People like her. She was in Doctor Who. People,
Yeah, I like her. I was going to say, is
like
she going to
her.
be like Jill Sparrow or something?
Yeah, they want
That's
her
kinda
to be
cool.
the main pirate character driving it forward.
You know what? People as pale as us do not belong
On the open
on the
seas.
open seas.
They'll probably make
So,
jokes about that the entire time.
They definitely need to, if they're going to make these movies, lean away from Johnny Depp. Obviously, he's had his controversy with Amber Heard.
Yikes.
We're finding out more and more that it seems like it is more Amber Heard than him. But apparently his contract is ironclad, and he could get up to $90 million if he does another movie.
That's crazy.
So it's like,
that's
why
so
would
much money to buy candles with.
Scarves and bracelets.
Multiple hats.
I've never seen a 60-year-old man with so many accessories.
Lenny Kravitz. Ooh, Lenny Kravitz and Johnny Depp should like be in a buddy cop movie.
I'd watch that.
The Scarves Boys.
But that's all the news I've got, and that's pretty much
Yeah,
pretty much I've got for this episode.
not a whole lot going on. We were supposed to get Black Widow last week. That didn't happen.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, that's November now.
I think the Disney Plus Marvel shows are still on time though. I think we're still getting Captain America, Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
That's in August
maybe.
or something.
So Europe is next week is opening up and allowing film to start going again, and a lot of those are filming in Europe. So it's maybe if they can kind of catch up on the month and a half, 2 months they lost, they may make those dates.
I don't know that that's going to go well. I was reading, I think it was Paramount is one of the studios that has released their preliminary plans on how you do this. And they're basically saying you eliminate every single non-essential crew member. But, you know, they're saying everyone has to wear a mask, including the actors between takes. But then you're adding like half a day of work. If you're making the actors take off a mask, then you have to touch them up before you can go for a take. Logistically, whenever I've worked on a set consistently, if someone has a cold on Monday, everyone has a cold on Friday.
Yeah, I mean,
There's just no way
yeah.
around it.
yeah. Even if you're adding all this extra time to take masks on and off and blah blah blah. If you're working a 12, let's say a 10 to 15 hour day, if it's Europe, I think it's shorter. But if you're working a dozen hours with all these people, you're gonna get it
Yeah.
whether you're wearing a mask or not.
Yeah.
In close
They're
proximity.
I think it's going to blow up in their faces by doing it a little too early.
Well, I think
Well, I think that's
everything's
true
gonna
of here too. I
change.
think that's why it's gonna. Sorry, I think that's why it's gonna prolong this. July potential release date is because it's gonna come back on all these states that are reopening right now. We're gonna get this
Yeah.
second wave, and it's gonna be worse. We're already, even if we were properly social distancing and closing everything for a right amount of time, there's still gonna be a second wave just because of the way that flus work. Over the
Right.
summer,
Right.
but it's going to be even worse because all these people are allowing themselves to be exposed to it by opening up
Right.
too early.
Mhm. And people are going to like mentally reach their breaking points. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to have that one day where they just say, screw it. And then they infect everyone else
Yeah.
around them, even
Yeah.
if they do go back to their normal of being careful.
right.
Yeah.
So I do think the industry is going to change a bit. So if you look at how The Mandalorian was filmed, it was all rendered in real time. The backgrounds, they were filmed in front of like these giant screens, and
Yeah, it's like,
I think
this is cool actually. I think it's like a half dome, right? And it's got it's like a digital green screen, and then they project whatever they want on the background, so you
yeah,
can
and
film.
they render it in real time.
Yeah, you can film all
so
these
they
gorgeous
need a lot
like
less crew.
yeah.
So they were still able to film some Mandalorian season 2 stuff during all this because it's a very small amount of crew because the lighting and everything's controlled and automated.
Yeah.
So they may figure out ways to do this. You brought up Paramount. Paramount is really trying to figure this out because they've got 2 huge Tom Cruise movies that they're working on between the Top Gun sequel and the 2 Mission Impossible movies they're filming back to back.
I wonder how the Scientologists are handling this situation. Maybe they're just not focusing hard enough on overcoming it.
So Katrina and I were on a walk the other day, and we walked by a Scientologist church, and I was joking that if, God forbid, Tom Cruise gets this and he ends up dying, the Scientologists are gonna get some like projectors or something and shoot beams up into the sky to make it look like he ascended or something.
They totally
Oh,
do
boy.
it. He paid for that level, okay?
Well, I think he has to at this point, right? I think they're holding him
Yeah.
hostage.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for listening.
Tune in
Alex,
next week
please
for
tell
our-
us where.
Tune in next week for our deep dive on Scientology.
Alex, please tell us where our listeners can find you on the social medias.
I'm on Instagram, dyslexic, DYS Alex IC, and Twitter is my last name, PULISCI.
Check out his shirts, the Social Distance Social Club. We got a couple of them. They're pretty comfy.
They are.
I'm very impressed with the quality of that
Thank
shirt.
you, appreciate it. We strive for quality.
And Katrina, where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity and Katrina Sherwood as myself, I guess.
Check out her YouTube and check us out on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all at MDXpods. As of our last episode, we are officially on Spotify.
Woo!
So you can check us out pretty much anywhere where podcasts are found: Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.